What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the ARC podcast. If you are new tuning in, I am your host, Brandon Zachary. Thank you for joining. And this is the Athletes Resilience Center podcast, where we talk all things mental performance in sports. On this week's episode, we have special guest Lilly Bernardi. Lilly is the Assistant Director of Sports Performance at the University of North Carolina. In this episode, we dive into her athletic career at the College of New Jersey that eventually led into her professional career of being a strength and conditioning coach at multiple colleges and then ending up at the University of North Carolina. We go into what made her want to become a strength and conditioning coach. We go into the grind and the mental battles that she's had to fight so far while becoming the Assistant Director of Sports Performance at the University of North Carolina. And we go into a lot of great conversations on why someone would want to become a strength and conditioning coach and the resiliency factors and the mental obstacles that you have to hurdle in order to get to where you want to be. This is a great episode. We're really excited to be able to share this with you guys, so hope you guys enjoy. What's up, everyone? We have Lilly Bernardi on here. Lilly, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to go through Lily's journey, and we have a bunch of questions for her. We're really excited about this. So we'll kick it back to you, Lilly, and you kind of guide us through your journey and how you've gotten to where you are today.
Sure. In my current role, I am an assistant director of sports performance at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I honestly got into strength and conditioning as a student athlete in college. I went to the same school as you, Brandon. We went to TCNJ. I played women's lacrosse there, and going into TCNJ, and when I decided I wanted to play lacrosse in college, the name of the school isn't flashy or anything, but they have a pretty decorated women's lacrosse program. And when I set foot in my head coach's office and made the decision that I wanted to play there, you're like staring at national championship trophies and just all of her accolades. So for me, I didn't just want to go and play lacrosse there. Like, I wanted to go and play. Like, I wanted to be a part of that kind of championship culture, and I wanted to be a contributor to that. So I guess up until that point in high school and younger, I was just athletic. And I didn't do much outside of mandatory practices and things like that. But when I made the decision that I wanted to go there and compete in a program like that, I started becoming interested in the things you can do outside to help with your performance, whether it was nutrition and training. And so once I actually got to TCNJ and I found myself in the weight room, I wasn't the most decorated lacrosse player. I was a defender. I don't really have all the accolades that others have to show. But what I contributed on the field was like my work ethic, how hard I worked in the weight room. I kind of loved that was my first place where I really saw like stats for, what I was doing and the work I was putting in.
Right.
And yeah, I ended up doing an internship in strength and conditioning and loved it and haven't turned back since.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you mentioned obviously the decorated TCNJ women's lacrosse program. I know at least when I was there, you guys won like 3 NJAC championships. You made it to the national championship, like very, very well respected program. So obviously you've now bounced around to a couple different programs, and obviously they're kind of scattered based on skill level. Now you're in the ACC, which is obviously like the cream of the crop. It's the top. But with all the successes that you were able to achieve at TCNJ and kind of witness and see, how do you think that helped propel you get into your professional career and kind of approach the way that you work with athletes? Because obviously, like, you had your program that was really successful at TCNJ. Now you're implementing stuff with, a lot of athletes that might have the same or more talent than some of the people that you even played with?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, my athletic career contributed to, I think, who I am as a coach and, what I was striving for. I think, Division 3 versus Division 1, there's definitely a difference in the skill
Right.
level.
Right.
But I don't think you notice it when you're in that grind every day. Like when you are a team that's competing for a national championship, like our worst year was a Sweet 16, and that's crazy to say, but for
Yeah.
us, that was a
Right.
disappointment. So it's kind of like, I guess, myself as an athlete and what I know a lot of my athletes are striving for. It's not just the conference championships and things like that. I think, that's awesome, but I think a lot of us have bigger goals, and I think I can relate to that a lot.
Right.
Um, so I've carried that with me. And then honestly, like I think a big thing that has molded and shaped me as a coach and kind of what I look for from my athletes was the fact that my senior year was COVID.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I lost my senior year out of nowhere.
Right.
So I think obviously I reflect back to that, and I had to make a decision at that time. I could have a year of eligibility or I
Mhm.
could continue coaching. And when I was in my grad assistant role at Hofstra, I was kind of faced with that decision of do I want to try to play here or do I want to coach? And I was just getting such good experience, and in collegiate athletics, that is everything, is your
Right.
hands-on experience, and had to make that tough decision to just go after my career, but I really don't think I would be where I am right now had I not.
Right. Yeah. No, and I also had a fantastic experience at TCNJ. Like, again, even though it's D3, very competitive program amongst most sports, I'd say. Like, we really had a great program, and I was really thankful to be able to be a part of that. And, being in the strength and conditioning program there, that was also the first time that I kind of hit the weight room outside of, like, I don't know, running on the treadmill or anything like that, like actually trying to work towards getting better on the field and getting stronger. So you kind of touched upon it a little bit, but was there like a specific moment or time period in your career at TCNJ when you were like, wow, I really am gravitating towards this and this is something that I really want to pursue?
Yeah, I think so. I went into school knowing I wanted to do something in health and exercise science. That's what I was going to get my bachelor's degree in. At first, in my mind, that was nutrition.
Okay.
And so, I was looking into what prereqs do I need for like a grad program and stuff like that. And I got to the point where I was going to have to take organic chemistry. And
Yeah.
I was like, I am just so not a chemistry person. Like,
Right.
can't do it another
Yeah.
semester.
Yeah.
So then after that, I was kind of like, okay, well, I still like this field, but what do I want to do?
Right.
And I went home over the summer. I worked in a physical therapy clinic. It just wasn't my speed. Like, it was interesting. So much respect for people who work in the PT setting, but it just, I don't know, like, I like a fast paced environment. I wanted to work with athletes. So then I thought with it for a little bit, and I think I probably walked into the weight room at the start of the following fall, and I was like, why don't I do this?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's right in front of me. And so I did my internship the fall of my senior year, and that was like a funny story too. I'm so fortunate that I thought to do that. Like I went to the head of our department and I was like, hey, I play lacrosse in the spring. I'm not going to be able to get all of these
Right.
hours. Can I do this in the fall? And had I not done that, I wouldn't have even gotten the internship experience that I had
Right.
because COVID canceled everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it weirdly worked out for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what was like, I know you mentioned COVID and everything. What was that transition like from, being an athlete, you're going into your season, everything kind of gets shut down. You start up at Hofstra, you kind of faced with that decision. Do I play? Do I kind of start my career? What was like that daily or did you ever hit that moment where you're like, I kind of regret this, I kind of don't, I kind of get the itch to play, I'm kind of just really focused here? What was that transition like for you?
It was an interesting transition. I don't think I knew what to expect at first. When our season got canceled, I remember that summer, I was like, I was training in my backyard like every day because I was like, well, what if they just decide that they want to let us play in the summer? What if this is all over and like they give us the opportunity to play?
Yeah.
I actually picked up a pair of cleats that I had ordered through the equipment office the day after our season was canceled. The first time I ever wore them was in my backyard. So like I just stayed ready. I wore out those cleats. Like I was outside every day at Hofstra, and I think that's kind of maybe what sparked the coach going to the strength coach and being like, hey, like, does she want to play? And everything just worked out in a funny way for me because I got my certification because during that quarantine time, I had nothing else to do but study for my certification exam. And I was like, as soon as the testing centers open up, I'm going to take that exam and then I can be a grad assistant. And then they basically weren't able to have any interns that first semester, but they were able to argue for me to work there because I was a certified coach. So they were like, we only have a staff of 3. We have 17 teams. We can only have about 10 people in the weight room at a time. Like, we need help. Yeah. And because I was certified, like, I was that help. Yeah. So I wasn't programming yet, but I was running sessions on my own by like week 2 or 3.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
and
awesome.
I just couldn't pass that up. So when I was kind of faced with that decision, I mean, let's be real, like I still have the itch to play. I'm the most competitive person. Like that's what I use as a coach to try to motivate my athletes. Like I'll step out there and race them if they want me to, but But yeah, it worked out in a funny way.
Great. So yeah, that's crazy. So like week 2, you're kind of baptism by fire. You're kind of already thrown in there. What were some of those obstacles kind of like for you?
Honestly, like I was young, and and some of the athletes, because I went to Hofstra, I grew up on Long Island, and a lot of athletes like go to Hofstra. I was coaching guys on the men's lacrosse team who I graduated high school with who took their year of eligibility. So I think that definitely could have been maybe more of an obstacle for me had the strength staff not handled it so well. Like as day one, I'm out there and they're like, this is Coach Lilly. So it's not just like, hey, this is Lilly, like she's around the same age as you. This is Coach Lilly. Nobody except the people I had known prior knew me as anything else. And I don't talk about my age unless my athletes ask, and I'm always curious to know. I'm like, how old do you think I am? And fortunately, they always guess older, which I take as like I carry myself as that. So, I think that was probably the most interesting part is like I was so close in age. I knew some of the athletes there, and I was navigating that.
Yeah. Matt and I both had that experience. We coached at Camden County College together, and they were kids that we had either coached or like played travel baseball with. Like they might have been a year or two younger, but they were on the team. So when we first got there, we faced that same thing where it's like some people are calling us by our first name, and we're both kind of like, what do we do? Do we tell them like, no, it's coach, or are we like, let's kind of like, I don't know, pump the brakes here and be chill? But yeah, no, you kind of have to find that balance where it's like, I can relate with you, but there is that respect factor there. Like that's really, really important.
And it's crazy. Like the coaching industry, you always want to seem older than what you are, but you kind of walk away from coaching for a day. You're like, man, I wish somebody would say I'm like 22 again or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I wonder when that will change for me, but like right now I still take it as a compliment when like I'll be talking about college or how my senior year was COVID, and like my athletes will start doing the math and they're like, so you're like only like 26, 27. I'm like, yeah.
So kind of take us through. I know you mentioned it earlier, right? Like you're part of a championship program at TCNJ. UNC obviously you're in the ACC, so you're high level athletes day to day. What are kind of from stop to stop, TCNJ to Hofstra, all the way up to UNC. What are the differences and some of the similarities between the athletes? I know you mentioned earlier kind of like the skill difference, but what are some of like the physical differences or similarities or just kind of from a mental side that you kind of see, or a strength side as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the D3 level, what I see is like, I mean, you have a mixture of athletes, and I'd say that we were maybe a higher D3 program, which I think can sometimes be misunderstood. Like, people don't just play D3 athletics because they're not good enough to play anything else. It's sometimes you're faced with a decision of like, what do you want your education to be like? Or, what do you want your schedule to look like, and things like that. So, I think probably most everyone on my team, probably Zach, yours as well, like probably could have played at other levels had we chose that route for ourselves. So that's why I feel like I can still relate a lot to the goals of my athletes. Hofstra and Fordham, probably more that like mid-major Division I level. And, like you have your freaks everywhere, like Division III, high level D1, mid-major D1. I honestly, like, when you step on the field or like when you watch these athletes play their sport, you can see the difference in skill sometimes. But I think in terms of, strength and conditioning, yeah, you'll have your freaks who can run faster than you've ever seen before.
Yeah.
But when I talk to my athletes and like I'm introducing them to the weight room and how to move, like you sometimes have those who get it and sometimes those who have to like try a little harder for it. And also sometimes you have to like motivate people a little bit more. And I think you kind of get that everywhere. Maybe a little less where I am now, but even then I don't find it to be all that different. But I think maybe what's at stake and sometimes what we're competing for, we can think more long term here with some of my programs and just like their history and what they have traditionally been competing for.
Right. Yeah. And I know, like, speaking in the baseball field at the very least, and like, I always view it from kind of a pitcher's lens just because I was a pitcher. Like, a lot of the times I feel like a lot of the D1 programs is the depth is just so much deeper. Like, the last person on a Division I program, especially I'm sure, like UNC, like, some of the guys coming off the bench for UNC were like people that played Division III that they recruited. Like, I know a couple of the guys on the roster played at Arcadia, and then there was the one Montclair State kid.
Yeah.
Who had a really good regional. But like I feel like the depth on those teams, it's just very deep, and it's a lot more people that have professional aspirations. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong there, but I feel like there's a handful of people probably that have the aspiration to play their sport at a Division III level beyond college. But I feel like if you're going to a UNC for whatever sport it is, you probably have the aspirations of playing professionally or at the Olympic level, whatever that kind of entails. But I feel like there's a little bit, like you said, there's something further to strive for rather than just try to be the best collegiate athlete you can be.
Yeah, like I think and also maybe it's based on our team selection and the teams that I currently work with. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I work with softball, gymnastics, and women's tennis.
Okay.
Women's tennis won the national championship like 2-3 years ago, something like that. So like they're looking to get back, and that's, those are goals that I can try to motivate them with. Like that is how I talk to them. Like I know going into this season, we lost in the Final Four. I'm using that as fuel this upcoming year.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, like we are great tennis players, but in terms of strength and conditioning, like what can we do better? Like what can we do better that's going to get us further this year than we got last year? So I think maybe what I can say and how I motivate them can be a little bit different. And like you said, I said, a little more long term. And yeah, I think that goes to whether they maybe want to play professionally after college, if that's an option.
Yeah, definitely. Now, going into UNC, right, and kind of applying for the position, getting the position, that whole process, was there any level of nervousness, like getting into the ACC, especially coming from TCNJ, and then you said Hofstra and Fordham, a little bit more mid-major schools, like jumping up to the ACC obviously is a really well-renowned conference in every sport. Like, was there a level of nervousness going into this process, or were you just ready to roll right into it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely nervousness. I wanted the job so bad, and honestly, like I had already applied to UNC and gotten rejected. I have applied for a role prior to actually landing this one,
Yeah.
and I was definitely maybe more nervous that first time. I was applying for a role to work with women's lacrosse, and like UNC
Yeah.
women's lacrosse is, I mean, they just came off a national championship. They're like
Yeah.
standard.
Yep.
Yeah.
For me, with that role, I think sometimes what can be different between the two levels is facilities and what you have access to, technology, things like that in regard to strength and conditioning. So for me, there was so much sports science that would be a part of that role that I didn't have experience with, and I didn't have the time to learn it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the right role for me. And coming out of that, I was crushed. Obviously,
Of
like I
course.
wanted
Of
the role
course.
so bad. I made it pretty far in the process, but I was crushed. Like I didn't get it, but I kind of used that, and I went back to my staff at Hofstra, and I was like, we have got to learn sports science. And in my mind, I was like, I am never ever getting turned down from a role again because I don't have access to sports science. So whether we're gonna get the technology, and if we can't, like I need to learn as much as I can about this. So there's a sports science certification that you can take. I don't have it. I started studying for it, and then didn't get there, but I was like, is this a way that I can learn more about sports science without actually having hands-on experience with some of this technology? And I was on like all these different YouTube channels and creating these athlete dashboards, and trying to like apply the concepts that like the technology looks at to say, hey, I have an understanding of this, and honestly, I've done it by hand now, so I might know it more than like the piece of equipment that
Yeah.
is looking
Yeah.
at it. So that was like a big thing for me, was if I want to get to this level, this is something that I'm going to have to learn. Otherwise, it's going to continually be an obstacle for me. So I was calling these different companies. I ended up on like a phone call with one of the head of the companies, and I'm like, hey, like I was just asking him a bunch of questions of, if I can't do this, like what are your thoughts on X, Y, and Z? Like how can I make this usable for me and show that I have an understanding of all this? And fortunately, like my current role, I guess, didn't require it as much, but I think when I went back the second time, I showed them how much I changed in the span of a year, and like included different things in my resume, like different athlete monitoring dashboards and questionnaires and things like that, to show like these are things that I want to apply with my teams.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's awesome. That's really inspiring that you were able to kind of get rejected the first time and then use that as more fuel to the fire rather than letting that deter you from applying again in the future. So that's awesome. That's great. But then moving into, you actually get the job and you're there. Um, we all know that camaraderie on a team is really important, whether it's on the field or in the weight room. How do you kind of build that camaraderie when people come in and lift? Because I'm sure some people are, like you said, more excited to come in and get their lift in, and others need a little bit more motivation. We've all played with people that, in the weight room, they kind of see it as like, this is an hour, I need to go do this. But other people are probably like, this is going to get me better. This is going to help a ton. So how do you kind of help people stay focused on the goal and like motivate people in the weight room to kind of get excited about this and know that this is going to transfer onto the field?
Mm-hmm. I'm very transparent about, I think, what I value as a coach. And to me, like attitude, effort, like those are like non-negotiables for me. Like I need that from my athletes. And I think, like I said, part of this goes back to how my career ended as an athlete. Like there's a part of me that I tell my athletes, any day you ask me, if you ask me to put on your uniform and go practice for 3 hours, doesn't matter the sport, like I would do it just to be a collegiate athlete one more day. Yeah. So, you know, I know the seasons get long. I know the days are tiring, but I kind of take it as a sign of disrespect if you're someone who's just going through the motions and not actually applying yourself, because I want my athletes to get everything they possibly can out of their 4 years, knowing that that 4 years isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think just kind of setting that standard up front, like I want attitude, effort, but that doesn't mean like I want you to load stupid weight on the bar and, you know, like I'm very big on like educating my athletes and answering their questions and trying to explain wherever I can why we're doing what we're doing, because I find that makes them want to work harder. So I'll give them like a 5-minute spiel on, you know, whatever it is I need to, if I feel like they're not seeing the translation and they're not engaged, and explaining to them why it's important. I think that's kind of like something I'm really big on, and I think that sometimes helps them.
Yeah, I think the transparency piece is really important. I know, like when I first got to TCNJ and playing baseball, like we would go to the weight room, and I remember at first, I think it was Savella's first year, and like obviously he's just kind of rolling out programs and just getting used to it. But again, the gym was so foreign to me that I just kind of was like, I don't think this is going to transfer in any way. And then when I came back my sophomore year after not a great freshman year, I was like having conversations with him like, what do I need to do to kind of get better and help? And he's like, well, these lifts transfer to baseball this way. And it was very helpful. Like that transparency was like, oh, well, if I get stronger in these lifts, hopefully that's going to mean I'm going to get better in these areas of baseball. So I feel like the transparency for an athlete is like huge.
Yeah. Like I think as strength coaches, sometimes it's so easy to just like, I don't know, try to show flashy exercises or, you know, like say these big words and like show off to the athletes and like all your knowledge, but they have no idea what you're saying. So sometimes you just need to stop and like take a minute and explain things to them and realize they don't have the same background. It's obvious to me why we're doing certain things because I sat and I thought about it and I wrote the programs, but you know, our athletes, they might not be able to make that connection themselves. And that's why I think a lot of times, sometimes athletes gravitate towards those, you know, flashy Instagram exercises because they're like, oh, this like looks exactly like what I'm doing out on the field. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, but there's like other better ways to do that.
Definitely.
That's awesome. I know you gave a little insight earlier, you know, talking about like the interview process and just kind of how you changed over a course of the year. You know, can you kind of give us, I guess it's kind of almost a two-part question. Can you kind of give us like the insight on how a strength and conditioning coach kind of develops not only like year to year, but like a daily basis, right? Like some people might think it's just all in the books, but obviously you guys have to go out and perform as well, just like a coach of lacrosse would have to, or a coach of like a different sport would have to. How do you guys kind of go out and develop? And I guess I'll ask my second part after that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of ways. And so for me, I'm really big on continued education. I do that a lot through presenting either myself, but when I present myself, I get to like go to conferences and also listen to other people talk, so I can get, you know, education that way. But reason I bring that up is like my first presentation I ever did was called What My Degrees Didn't Teach Me About Being a Coach. And that was essentially not a knock at TCNJ because I got a great education there. I was able to get my certification straight out of undergrad, but that first year at Hofstra for me, it the following year I was a full-time coach at Fordham, and it was my boss there who kind of encouraged me or nudged me to present at a clinic. And I was like 1 year full-time experience, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what am I going to talk about? Like, what?
Right.
I don't have like established systems, or I'm still experimenting. Like, I'm not going to talk anything super training specific. But it was really day one stepping into Hofstra and like, you're certified. I have my bachelor's degree. I got 100 on my programming project at the end of the semester at TCNJ. And then day one, you like look around at these coaches and just how they operate a weight room and organize everything. And you're just like, I know nothing.
Yeah.
I know nothing. And I think the education is obviously the foundation for coaches, but actually getting that practical hands-on experience, it's things like projecting your voice. It's things like, we joke about the first time you ask an intern to blow a whistle and you're just like, what, what does that sound? It's like little things like that, where to stand to position yourself better, to see a movement. There's a lot of things. It's finding mentors, whether it's where you are or honestly, Strength Coach Instagram is strong. Like,
Yeah.
I have found mentors just over the internet and have contacted them and then later met them at conferences and things like that. So I think it's a lot of that to learn as a coach. And what I will say is, even now, I'm going into my 5th year full time, but this past year at UNC, what I look at when I'm coaching and cueing athletes, I feel like I'm an intern all over again because I have grown so much since October. Like, I was not even looking at the same exercises. Like, it's so different what I'm looking at now, and I think that that's kind of how I've grown a lot in this past year.
That's awesome. So I think that's a perfect kind of segue into my second question. Kind of take us through, those first couple months or, the first year, between, let's say, Hofstra, Fordham, like that early part of your career. What was the day in the life like for you? Just kind of like a general aspect, and then take us all the way through now, right? You're on like the 5th year of full time, like you're on this journey of mastery now. What did it look like that early part, and then what does it look like now for you on that daily life?
Mm-hmm. When I got to Hofstra as a grad assistant, it was me and 3 strength coaches, and I was probably at every single session. There were 2 weight rooms, so I was at every session when they weren't overlapping. So as many sessions as I could possibly be at, I probably worked with all 17 teams at some point in time. And I don't remember if we set up at 5:30 a.m. or the session started at 5:30 a.m. So I was setting up at 5. Something like that. But our first session of the day in the fall, when I had like a full day, it was men's lacrosse in 2 separate groups at like 5:30 in the morning. And it was COVID, so we had groups of like 5, and it was all hands on deck operation. There was the sport coaches, there was the strength coach, there was me. And so we would run 5 athletes at 5 different stations, and then we would rotate them. And so I'm coaching the same station 5 times in that first 1 hour session. And then we'd have the second half of the team come the next hour, and I'm coaching the same thing for the next 5 groups that come through. And by the time that's over, it's only like 7. So then I have like every other team. I'm back and forth on both sides of campus. Last team, I think probably finished for me somewhere around 4 o'clock, because I would start my grad classes at, my first class was at 4:30. And then my next class was probably at like 6 o'clock. And the head strength coach was my professor for that second class. So like we had been there 5:30 a.m. Then he's teaching me in my class at like 6 p.m. We finally leave around 8 p.m. And then it's like, all right, see you tomorrow.
Yep, yep.
Go home, shower, eat, go to sleep. Train somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And honestly, all that made it worth it. I don't need a gym membership ever.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What does it look like now for you? You know, what does that day in the life general like, you know, day to day look like at UNC for you now?
So at UNC, it's definitely a little different. I'll kind of like briefly, at Fordham and Hofstra, I had 6 teams in both places. When I was at Fordham, it was my last semester of grad school because I was able to get a job. So I was taking classes at night or like doing work at night. Same thing, my commute was tough. So that was a pretty long day. When I went back to Hofstra, I had 6 teams. So I had some more like time in the middle because I wasn't in classes or anything anymore, but I still had 6 teams. So I think the thing with that is when you juggle so many teams on your plate, you're tied a little bit more to the weight room. And if you're doing speed and agility or something outside, you can get out to the field, but you're a little more tied to your schedule in the weight room. I ran our internship program. I taught classes as just a way to, you know, make some more money. So I would have that throughout the day as well. And then now at UNC, I work with 3 teams, and it's not to say that like my schedule's not as busy, but I have the ability now to just dive so much deeper with a lot of my teams.
Right.
I can do speed and agility sessions for everyone if they want me to. Like for tennis, I do their speed sessions out at the courts when I can. I try to piggyback that off of practice so I can get to practice once or twice a week. Softball, I pretty much do all of their training in the weight room, occasionally a speed session outside, but I'll try to go to practice definitely in the fall as often as I can. Gymnastics, I try to get into the gym. You know, we do more with sport science. We have full staff performance meetings, and that's strength and conditioning, that's nutrition, that's athletic training and the coaches, and we do a full debrief on the entire team, and we go like athlete by athlete, and we really talk it through. And I will say that that's something I just didn't have the time for necessarily to do with all of my teams in previous roles.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, having that much time now dedicated to like the 3 teams, I feel like that's also very different from the Division 3 level where like we had one strength coach and then maybe someone helping. But like again, same thing. It's like he's writing programs for hundreds and hundreds of people. So it's like it's very hard to really take a deep dive into each individual team where like you are able to kind of get your hands on it a little bit more in depth, I guess, than like you had in years past, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you mentioned it earlier. You kind of made a comment about like social media coaching. How do you kind of navigate? Because I talk to Matt about this all the time. Like hitting and pitching coaches, it's very I don't know. It can be very beneficial. You can learn a lot from a lot of the social media coaching, or it can be very like egotistical, where it's like this is the only way you can do things. I'm the person that like knows all of the things for pitching or hitting. I feel like strength probably has a similar like gauge, I guess. How do you navigate like taking things from other people and then like you said kind of getting mentors from social media and utilizing some other people's I don't know exercises or things that they implement versus like seeing negative comments where it's like maybe it's an exercise that you implement and you see like a video and it's like this is why you shouldn't use this exercise and it's like what are you even talking about? Like how do you navigate like going through that on social media?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the same thing I tell my athletes. We actually, some of my staff this year, we made a presentation on helping athletes like after they transition out of being a college athlete, like that's a big, identity change for them.
Huge.
And part of that was, as strength conditioning, we wanted to put something together on like, how do you navigate social media now? And, what's a trusted source, what's not?
Yeah.
Anytime someone is saying this is the best or only way, like run away.
Yeah.
Run away
Yeah.
from it. Just
Yeah.
don't. And like, maybe you can cipher through like, okay, like that's a fair point. But anytime there's like an absolute in there, this is the only way, or like never do this, never do that, usually that's a big red flag for me.
Right. Yeah.
So knowing that, but yeah, so my social media started off as a way to like kill time during COVID. I have my own personal Instagram and I keep my personal life private. But then I started a page where it was more, I guess, for my friends or whoever wanted to follow it. And I was like, hey, this is going to be my journey to getting my certification. It was a way for me to hold myself accountable. So I was posting daily workouts. I probably have since deleted a lot of them, but like it started off as my daily workouts. This is what chapter of the book I'm reading. Like, this is what I learned. And I was posting things like that.
Yeah.
And then once I got into the field a little bit, one of our internship assignments was like follow 10 strength conditioning pages or coaches on social media. And I started learning through our internship syllabus. I was listening to podcasts, we were doing readings, and I would look for those coaches that basically our internship coordinator was recommending to us. I was trying to find them on social media. I was following all these collegiate strength and conditioning coaches. So by the time I actually like got to meet these people at conferences, I was like, oh my God, like I know them. And I was like starstruck because I had been following them for so long. But yeah, I think definitely just I never program anything for my athletes either without trying it myself. If I'm curious about something that I see online, I'm trying that exercise, or I'm just trying to get more background on the person or the information that they're putting out. Like, I don't just kind of throw things into my athletes blind. It's either I've tried that movement myself because I have to demonstrate it,
Right.
or I've done a lot of research into something like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can attest to that too from like the I don't know, the baseball skill side. I feel like it's the same thing where if someone's giving absolutes, then it's like that's probably not very good information that you're getting. And again, like there are definitely some trusted sources where it's like this person or this account puts out a lot of good content. So some of these exercises, same thing. You kind of want to try out and maybe see if they work, but like a lot of them, if you're getting that negative energy, like from the jump, where they're like, never do this exercise, do this instead, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's feeding bad information to people and kind of like preying on people because it's fear mongering. So I feel like it's like I don't know, like a rocky road on social media sometimes.
Yeah, and I feel like something about strength conditioning coaches, and I feel like everyone kind of says it, is I do these presentations and stuff, and I'm kind of like, who am I to be standing up there and, talking to these people? But it's just like we're all kind of masters at seeing what other people say and do with their teams and playing around with the idea. And maybe I'm not going to run the program exactly the way you did, but we're kind of masters at taking information and trying to understand, how can I apply this some way in my program that makes sense for me, my environment, my teams? And it kind of just sparks like new ideas, or you kind of take something and you put your own spin on it. Like, you don't have to run it the exact same way as someone else does because, we have different athletes. There's so many different factors that go into it. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, of course. And you mentioned like obviously there are different strength coaches that do different things. You have different athletes. My next question was going to be, how do you navigate like athletes when they go home on breaks? I'm sure at UNC a lot of people might stay on campus or be in the weight room for a lot longer than maybe like someone at TCNJ might be, where like when you're on break, you're not really back on campus. But how do you navigate when people go home and maybe they work out at a gym with a trainer who obviously isn't running the program the same way that you are? Like, is it kind of a headache because once they get back on campus, you're like, all right, we kind of have to redo the same thing that we just worked on all fall? Or do most of your athletes kind of follow a specific program that you write for them over the off season, or how does that work?
You spend a lot of time on summer programs
Yeah.
and you really hope that they do it.
Yeah, of course.
My biggest thing is train.
Yeah. Right.
You have a person you like going to at home, go ahead. Like
Yeah.
that is fine.
Right.
Do something.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where we run into the bigger issue is someone who goes home and doesn't do anything for 2 months. And then it's like every year when you start back up in the beginning of the fall, you're starting in the same place. Like if I am collecting data on athletes and maybe their numbers and percentages, like I recognize that there are periods in the year that we are going to get really strong, and then there are periods in the year where maybe we're not in the weight room quite as much or strength isn't our focus. And so that's going to change, and we might see a drop in those strength numbers. But I think what my goal would be is when you come back next year, are we starting at a slightly higher level? Like, is our max 5 to 10 pounds higher than it was at this point next year? And I think that's what I like to compare, or what I will like to compare more is where were we at this point last year? And I hope that that's better. So I think if my athletes are going home and they're training hard, to me, if you do my programs, awesome. But I hope that they have an awareness and an understanding of how they should be training. I don't want them going home and training with this trainer because they're like, oh, they don't really push me that hard. It's kind of easy, but like I checked the
Right.
box. Like they should know how they need to train to come in prepared.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of your, we usually like to ask all of our guests this like the next steps question, right? So what are some of your goals and what are some of your visions kind of moving forward for, yourself personally and just kind of overall in like the grand scheme of, I guess strength and conditioning community?
For me, I'm still like riding the high of this being a dream role for me. I see myself hopefully here for many years. I'm so fortunate to work at UNC. I love all of my coaches. Like I am so blessed with such great coaches and great people, that is huge for me. Because this move for me was it was about the job professionally, but there was also a lot of things in my personal life that worked out for me here, and I hope I can stay just as happy in this role for a long, long time. So professionally, I like where I'm at. I'm not one to chase a job title. I think for me, hopefully maybe some more administrative roles in the future, but I still think I have a few years to, build on the foundation that I set with my teams this year. Hopefully get a few championships under our belts.
Yeah.
Dive a little bit more into the technology. This year I got a good understanding of what the teams were already doing that I needed to catch up on and come right in and know how to implement with my team. So I think that I got comfortable with that this year, but maybe looking towards, okay, like what else can we do to make our program better? So I think that that's something that will hopefully continue to expand for me. I do a lot of presenting. I'm presenting at a conference this upcoming weekend, so hopefully that goes well. This one's a 2-day, so it's a lecture one day and a hands-on presentation the following. So I'm excited for that. And like I don't know. I had a pretty good year this past year, so I have some wedding planning to do too. So
Yeah.
I'll get through that, and then maybe I'll start setting other to-dos for myself as well.
Of course.
The most
Yeah.
important stuff.
Yeah, that takes priority. Awesome. Well, Lily, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and answering all of our questions and going back and forth about the obstacles that you faced. We really appreciate you coming on. And yeah, best of luck to everything in the future. And of course, congratulations on your wedding coming up, and it's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. This was awesome.
Great. Thank you.